and start recording right now. And welcome. Hi, it's been a while. I want to thank Elena for being our fantastic VP and hosting last month's meeting. I was up in Maine with my husband. His side of the family, but the officiant of our wedding, which is his uncle, his daughter, and all of them had just moved up to Winthrop, Maine, which is sort of central north mid-Maine, I guess. And it was my first time there, and they had a wedding ceremony. And there was only about 10 people, and we were very socially distanced. But it was really nice to get away for a few days and check out Maine. So that being said, I just want to see if everybody can hear and see me okay. Feel free to put it in the chat. I'm assuming. Awesome. Thank you, Joni. I have more lights on me, but I do not have a ring light yet. But the last time I hosted a meeting here, it kept getting darker, and I also kept getting darker. So I made sure to put plenty of lights on me tonight. All right, so we have some updates for you. So the way the meeting's gonna go tonight is the HDA board will provide some updates. I think Elena's here, and what she'll do is go over the different roles that are up for election. So usually we have our HDA board elections on in November during our November meeting. But given everything that's been going on, kind of just generally gesturing to everything in the world, we decided as a board to postpone that until December. That way, those of you who were interested could express your interest and also learn more about the positions. So Elena will be providing updates on that. And we will have a vote for leadership on our December meeting. So normally we wouldn't have a December meeting, but because there will be no DCNA holiday party this year, sadly, we will be having just a, even just a small meeting where we will sort of discuss the year. Of course, we didn't really get a chance to do a lot of the things that we were hoping to do this year. We were stalled on that, but regardless, some progress has been made, and we really appreciate all of you showing up and being here tonight. So my updates, and then I'm gonna pass the mic. So I wanted to give you an update on the Laurel Court Saddlewood project that we discussed. A few of you a couple of sessions ago or a couple of meetings ago had asked if that project was still moving forward, and we were told that it was stalled. And I wanted to give you the update that the sort of first step of that process in getting approved is going to be on Thursday night, which is the night of the council meeting this month. It's on a Thursday, not on a Wednesday. So that's Thursday the 12th. I have told the developer, Charles Epstein, I have told of LMC, I told him that I would speak on behalf of Harsimus Cove Association, and I just wanted to let you know what I would be saying because it's what we had agreed upon and voted on as a membership in February, all the way back in February. So I'm just going to read it to you. I sent it to Charles again recently, and he also, approved of, and reinstated that he would abide by our asks. And so I will read those to you right now quickly. The Harsimus Cove Association membership's final approval of the Laurel Court Saddlewood project is contingent on receiving and reviewing the fiscal analysis for the proposed public school. In addition, we would like LMC to present the redevelopment plan to our members for review and comments before it is presented to planning. So that is still good. This is just sort of the initial approval that's being voted on. And we will welcome Charles and his team back if the project does get approved by council. And some of you might be wondering, is this a usual process where council votes on a project like this? No, there was some discrepancy between the certain unions and perhaps even Mayor Fulop can speak to that in a little bit. But it seems as if the consensus has been reached and this is sort of the final approval, at least to have the site plan. All right, that is my update. I did put in the chat a survey. If you haven't already filled out this survey, it's a feedback survey for the Liberty State Park Interior Restoration Project. And they extended the deadline of that survey to tonight at midnight. So if you have not filled out that survey already, feel free to do so. And there's also a video link in that survey to the presentation in which the restoration project proposal was presented. So if you did want to watch that and give it a review. Sure, Marianne, I can put it in again.
Yeah, because I joined late, and when you join late, you won't see any prior posts.
No
Thanks.
worries. It looks like Sam has also, excuse me, put some information in here, and Sam, I'll give you a moment to speak. Also, I am joined by honorary board member Puppy the Pomeranian, who is 15 and has really bad allergies right now. So if you hear a coughing, wheezing dog, it is Puppy. And if she comes over here, I will pick her up and show her to everybody because everybody could use a little bit of Puppy in their life. But she likes to hang out by my feet while I give presentations. And so if you hear coughing, that's what it is. Actually, Chris, my husband, just went to grab, she has an account at Walgreens under her name for hydrocodone cough medicine because she has these cough issues. Okay, so that's enough from me. I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Alina. Alina, if you want to give a rundown on membership and election stuff, that would be great.
Sure. So as Sarah said, we have postponed the elections till December. This is not changing our own, this is not extending our own terms or doing anything anti-democratic like that. The new board typically assumes their positions in January, and typically we hold elections in November because we do not have a December meeting and we go to the DCNA holiday party instead. This year, with everything that's happened, we missed a few meetings back in the spring, and we decided, since we have the mayor here tonight and no DCNA party in December, we decided just to have a small December meeting where we will hold our elections and you know, talk about goals for the next year. So so that's why we're not having elections today. This also gives anyone who's interested in joining the board more time to learn more about what it involves or ask specific questions about any of the specific positions. So the positions that we have elections for are president, which is what Sarah is now. Pretty self-explanatory. You're the head of the organization, and you know, the face of the organization, runs the meetings, etc. we have two vice president positions, vice president of communications and vice president membership. Communications handles social media, things like that, and membership, typically hangs flyers to promote the meetings and or otherwise promotes them, and also tracks attendance. And we also have treasurer, which handles the finances, and executive secretary, which takes minutes at the meetings and at the board meetings. We typically have one board meeting a month, about a week before our general meeting, pending everyone's availability. So that's kind of the rundown on the positions. And we also have one committee chair right now, our development chair, Jacob. But one thing we had discussed going into this year was having more committees. So unfortunately, that didn't quite pan out with everything that happened this year. I don't think any of us could have anticipated a global pandemic or any of the other things that were going on. But I think that was a goal of ours this year, and I think it's something we will have a renewed effort for in 2021. So if you have a particular interest in any committees, such as streets and sidewalks, or for a committee. We do have some ideas from last year, but again, that never really got off the ground with the pandemic and everything. But as of now, we just have the development committee, which is Jacob. So if anyone has any questions or would like to potentially serve on the board for next year, or is interested in learning more. Oh, right, thank you, Sarah. We are also hoping to start up an embankment committee, so as to better support the Embankment Coalition, as we hopefully will get our park, our Harsimus Cove Park, sooner rather than later. And a big thanks for Maureen for her tireless work on that over the years. So if anyone is interested in learning more or would like to nominate themselves or someone else for a position, please send an email to harscoveassociate@gmail.com. I'm going to drop that in the chat. You'll also be able to nominate people in real time at our December meeting, either yourself or someone else, but you can also go ahead and nominate by email or just ask questions about the different positions as well. Does anyone have any questions right now? We have not opened, we have no nominations right now. This is our first announcement, so.
Is running again, so by default the same people will continue in their positions. The context is I'm interested in being on the board and getting more involved, but I don't necessarily want to run against somebody else. Or I don't need to, I'm not trying to make a competition, but I'd like to be more involved. But I don't know, if the treasurer is running again, etc. So
You could just be on a committee then.
Yeah, I mean, feel free to email us in the general email. And Caitlin asked, can these positions and descriptions be sent out in an email? Yes, absolutely. If someone could just make a note of that, we can send out the positions. They're also on our website, harscoveassoc.org. And then we also are, because as a board, we are still trying to figure out our structure for next year, even if all of us do decide to run in the same positions, there's always room for other people. We're always looking for people to get involved and really build up the community and look for new ways to build a community, because I think right now what we're seeing is we need alternate forms of community building. And we're sort of flying by the seat of our pants with that, but we can also kind of look to the previous 6 months or so to see what sort of organizations have been successful. Another thing also is that we've had a few calls for sponsorship, which have been great, but also kind of stymied because of the pandemic. So we are hoping to kind of re-up and reinvigorate our calls for sponsorship. And so that way, you know, when the time comes for us to meet in person again, we're able to have our tasty treats and throw some fundraising events. So yeah, and Annie says there are at-large positions. So what we can do is, and in all honesty, you know, we made this decision sort of last minute just because we were all so wrapped up in the past week and the national election. So what we will do for you and for ourselves is to review the bylaws, see what's in there, and send out more information. And if you'd like more information, you can email us on that. So if, let's say you don't get an initial email, and you're interested in being involved, please reach out and we will figure out a way to involve you, whether it is in a formal position in the executive board or via a committee. Elena, thank you for that. Any other questions or comments regarding elections?
In case there is a competitive, if you will there be statements that people can kind of create and they'll be emailed out to everybody, or will there just be a couple of kind of statements made during the next meeting where the people vote? Kind of curious the process.
Yeah, Sunny. So the way that it will work is you can, if you do decide to run for a position, you can certainly make a statement and make that statement at the December meeting, which will be dedicated to the election and the upcoming year.
Okay, thank you. No mail-in ballots then, right? To count like a week later.
We actually have until December of next year to make up the decision of who will be the HCA board.
Cool.
Oh gosh, absolutely not. Let's hope not. Let's see one process be democratic at least. Okay, so any other board updates? All right, if there aren't any other board updates, are there any member updates?
Sarah, I'd like to update.
Go for it.
The Embankment annual meeting is November 18th. It will be our first big virtual meeting, so I hope it goes well. But you can sign up for it on our website. At the top of our homepage is a sign up box, and we'll send you the link for that, for the meeting the day before. And the mayor is going to speak at that as well.
Awesome, thank you so much. Is there a time?
7 o'clock.
7 p.m. Awesome, thank you, Maureen. Any other? Sure. Go ahead, Sam.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Sarah and Elena. Want to mention again that as Sarah said, the survey, the public comment seeking by the DEP on the interior 234-acre nature plan with trails and on the whole entire park is live until 11:59 tonight. So Sarah and I both put the link in the chat box. On that survey page at the top is a 21-minute video presentation that the DEP did on October 20th. So they explain the mosaic of nature habitats that'll be in the interior. The superintendent mentioned that the southwest area of the interior could be one of the sensible places for some active recreation, and also the Camp Liberty parking lot and a couple of acres just to the west of the footbridge could also be active recreation locations. And so the survey will take ideas about dog runs or tennis courts or run markers for runners or whatever ideas you have to improve the park in the coming years. So also we thank the Mayor Fulop, who's been a tremendous, fierce supporter of the park and against privatization for many years. And in the coming weeks, the DEP, after digesting the survey results, will have 2 or 3 breakout sessions, which will be announced and open to anyone, one on remediation, one on active recreation, one on perhaps just a general get together Zoom meeting. And the Friends and the Baykeeper, we're moving forward with the petition is getting closer to 23,000 signatures. We have 92 organizations, including 30 from Jersey City, including the Harsimus Cove Association in the coalition letter to the governor. And perhaps starting in a week or two, we will be urging people to call the governor's main switchboard to urge him to publicly take a stand for the Protection Act, because he's been silent except for saying the park is a treasure. And so we really need to start pressuring the governor. And we'll ask people to insist with the operator to say a person's name and our town, because such a process could be open to Paul Fireman, starting a couple of phone banks to have like hundreds and hundreds of calls without any names and towns to the governor. And the survey, one reason it's important is because I'll just mention to show that the tactics of the billionaire whose ulterior motive is to get Cave and Point Natural Area for golf holes is for about 10 days, whenever recently, until the other day, when anyone Googled Liberty State Park, there was a Google ad at the top of the page with a falsehood statement and linking to the phony front group of firemen. And that group admitted that they were funded by firemen, and it has all sorts of falsehoods about the interior and about the park. So our grassroots effort, as in all previous battles in the park's decades of history, is important for all of us to stay involved and to use our voice. So thank you. We'll just continue to fight together to get the Protection Act passed so we can all have a positive, peaceful era for our quality of life and to ensure the park is always free in its entirety for future generations. So thank you for all that time. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, Sam. I know we say this every meeting, but you are an invaluable member of our community, and we appreciate the heck out of you. I spent Sunday in Liberty State Park, and every single parking lot was filled to the brim with people, but it was not crowded because there's so much space for people to be able to socially distance and still picnic and ride their bikes and run. So even though, parking might have been scarce, what's new? It's still people biking in, it still just felt like there was plenty of space and room for folks to breathe. And we know that, during the height of the first round of the pandemic, how invaluable Liberty State Park was then as well, especially for me and my sanity, and being able to socially distance and enjoy nature. Yes, Marianne, I made a joke and then I immediately regretted making the joke about parking. Too soon. All right. I am going to, any other member announcements?
I just want to say that I live at 3rd and Coles, a block away from Jersey Avenue. And I think since the last meeting, the stop signs have gone up along Jersey Avenue. And I just want to say, at least personally, that it's the first time in a while that I haven't gotten some anxiety approaching Jersey perpendicular to it and thinking, oh, gee, what am I going to encounter here in terms of my efforts to get across this. So I really do appreciate whoever was involved in getting the stop signs up. I think it's slowed things down a bit, but in a good way. So
yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Sunny. Yeah, it was a lot of work. I would say that James Solomon put in a lot of work to make that happen as well. And I have really loved having the stop signs there. Though I have seen a lot of people blow right through them because they don't either realize that they're there or whatever it is. But I think as people get used to them being there, that they will become sort of a point.
I think a lot of the old timers don't realize, and they forget because they're so used to driving forever the same way that they're just not used to it. That's more.
Yeah, that makes sense. Absolutely.
Yeah. It'll take them a
Also
while to
noticed that,
figure it out.
I'm sorry, Marianne, Christy. I've also noticed that some drivers will do diligence and stop and then go regardless of whether there are pedestrians around.
Right, exactly. Others will just fly through them. I actually yesterday on a run, or I guess it was Saturday, a guy came in a big blue SUV, probably came like this close to hitting me. And, I did my usual thing that I do when you almost get hit by a car, which is something that happens here a lot, which is what the fuck. And he apologized, which is fine. But I think, yes, it's definitely going to take some getting used to. Any other member comments, questions, concerns? All right. So if you do have anything to add or any questions that you might have, please put it in the chat. You can send a chat to me directly, privately, or you can put it in for everyone. So if we're going to let the mayor present, and then if we don't get to your question tonight, we will put it on what we call a parking lot question list and make sure that we get those questions answered for you. So if you think of something later on and we're past that topic, you can message me privately and I'll make sure to put something together. So I just want to introduce Mayor Fulop. First of all, congratulating you, Mr. Mayor, on the birth of your daughter, Stasha, who I believe was she born on the 10th?
11th.
On the 11th, yes.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
So congratulations, and really happy for you. And
Thanks,
also
Sarah.
would like to welcome you to HCA.
Thank you.
And I'm gonna go ahead and give the floor over to you, and you just let me know if you need screen sharing capabilities.
No. I figured that when we do these, let me take a step back and just say thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk to the Harsimus Cove Association here. And hopefully over the next hour, we could have a good conversation about a lot of topics that are of importance to maybe specifically your area or Jersey City as a whole. I hope that we could have kind of an interacting back and forth conversation, as I'm sure that there's a lot of residents here that have specific questions and topics, and I'd like to kind of maximize the time. And I'll preface by saying that there's really nothing off limits. If you have a question that's regarding the city or something that we've done, happy to have a conversation about it, discuss it publicly. Even if we don't agree, I'll do my best to articulate why the city made a decision that we did and how we're looking to move forward. Just as kind of a high-level introduction, I think it's no secret to anybody that it's been an exceptionally challenging year for us in Jersey City. A little bit less than a year ago, we had that mass shooting. That was December 10th. And then it seems like, on the heels of that, we rolled almost directly into school funding challenges, the largest cuts in the history of the state. And, at times I felt like Jersey City was unfairly targeted, but, this is the life and we have to figure out how to deal with that. And then directly rolled into kind of the COVID pandemic, the first wave of it. And now we're experiencing the second wave. So it's been a year of challenges, no doubt about it. And at the same time, I feel like we're continuing to move the city forward. We have a lot of really serious infrastructure and transformational projects on the horizon that are underway and moving forward. I like to say that most cities would hope for one, maybe two of those kind of very, very large scale transformational projects. We have 4 that we could highlight here in Jersey City. We've been able to manage the budget in tough situation. We had a $70 million gap. We delivered no tax increase on the municipal side, which was really, really challenging, but really proud of the work that our team did on that. And then we continue to make reforms and restructure government in a way to deliver better services. We're changing our DPW. We've revamped our police department in the last couple of months, continue to provide more resources where appropriate to departments. And I think on a lot of fronts, continue to lead New Jersey, whether it be affordable housing initiatives or whether it be COVID response initiatives. So there's a lot going on in the city, a lot to cover. And I'll turn it over to you, Sarah, if you want to kind of open up the floor, and maybe we'll see kind of where the group wants to take the conversation, and we'll go there.
Sure. So I am getting a question in. Someone who is concerned about the development that is being built on the Philippine Plaza. So that is the Laurel Court Saddlewood project.
Yeah.
Since Jersey City is the second largest city of Filipinos in the state, what will this mean for the families that were living there? And just to let you know, Jessa, the families that are living there all approached the developer themselves and had said that they wanted to sell together and create an agreement. At least that's what the families who have come to our meetings have said, and that's also what the developer has told us. So given that buyout, that collective buyout, that was something that, yes. So if you want to add to that, Mayor Phillip, feel free.
Yeah. So the developer actually approached the landowners. This is the second time that a developer tried to do this. It's been very, very difficult to wrangle all of those homeowners together. And the way they've done it is by offering, a significantly high sale price for each of those homes. I believe it's 1.2 or 1.5. I have it written down somewhere, but it's certainly above market value on what they could normally get in the market. And so in order to make that project work from a financial standpoint, the developers asked for a pretty significant zoning change. And in my position from the beginning has been lukewarm on it. I don't really feel the urgency. The homeowners have approached me advocating for it. And my view on it was it felt like that it wasn't a fair market trade, being that the developer is enriching those homeowners, even though they're all Jersey City residents, and then the rest of the city is compensating for that by providing a massive density change in order to make the economics work. That said, though, what I indicated to the councilman is that I would go along with whatever he negotiated and whatever he felt was the best for that specific neighborhood. And so they've gone back and forth for, I think, the better part of 2 or 3 years. Councilman Solomon has worked really, really hard on this project. And they've come to a resolution that provides a lot of different benefits for the community. So yes, it is a massive zoning change from R1 zoning, which is 2 stories, to be a significant high rise. But it does provide more open space. It does provide a public school, which felt like there was limited spaces for us to get a public school. And then it has a small component of affordable housing. I believe the number is 5%. And so when you put all of that together, the financial analysis looks like it's still a fairly tight deal with regards to the economics. What Sarah said earlier is accurate. The sticking point today is regarding union labor. It is really important to me that the larger buildings, when they do come for subsidies, are built with union labor. And then you might probably are asking, why do I feel that way? Well, 6 years ago, we started a program, a partnership with the Hudson County Building Trades, where we really pushed them to hire local minority hires and train them. So people that wouldn't have an opportunity to work in that industry, we've really pushed them to make the hires here in Jersey City and give those people an opportunity for a career, pension, healthcare, as opposed to having an open shop sort of building. So I would feel disingenuous in what I said to them over the last 6 years if they fulfilled their side of the bargain in hiring hundreds of Jersey City residents, particularly from the south side of Jersey City. And then when we have an opportunity in a tough economy to do some work, that we turned our back on them. So the sticking point has been really around union labor. The contractor says that they can't make it work, and it continues to be an important priority for me. So this is just one step in a long process that the council is voting on Wednesday. If they do not get to a resolution that takes into account the union labor component of it, then that project probably will not be moving forward, because I know several on the council feel the same way I do. This is just a step in the process to get there. So that's kind of where we are big picture on this. And like I said, I have mixed feelings about it, to be honest with you. It is consistent entirely with the affordable housing ordinance that we introduced and passed 2 weeks ago, whereas it has a component of affordable housing, and then the city negotiated some community benefits that really are meaningful. The school is that, but at the same time, it is a very significant zoning change.
And I just want to follow up with that, Mayor, that we have had in this association just countless conversations about this, countless meetings. The board has gone to countless meetings back and forth with the developer. James, Councilman Solomon has also been working with us very closely. So yes, the plan as you'll see it. So I'm going to kind of just say stay tuned, because you will see more of what the plan looks like. So that it appears that either way, something may go in that spot. And it's basically, are we going to scrap this deal and then try to negotiate and go through this whole process all over again with somebody else when they inevitably find another person? Do we honor the wishes of the residents who are looking to sell? There are lots of moral questions. And as you know, as a moral philosopher, of course, I've sat and thought about this for far too long. But regardless, there will be information coming down the pipeline about that. Like Mayor Phillips said, this is very preliminary. So I want to get to some other questions and kind of parking lot these other questions related to Saddlewood Laurel Court, just to make sure that we get around to everybody. So the next person was Annie. Annie, you wanted to ask 2 questions live instead of in the chat, so go ahead and do that.
Yeah, they're not hugely big things. No,
Hey,
I
Annie, how are you?
good. How are you, Steve?
Good, good, good.
Congratulations on that.
Hey, thank you. Hi, Charles.
And congratulations to all of us on the Arts
Yep.
Fund. Yeah. These outdoor dining structures, I haven't been in the loop too much except at the beginning when I was first hearing about these outdoor dining structures that were going to be built that were going to also allow music to come out of them. Can you talk a little bit about where things stand with that now? And I also heard it was not going to be like on Newark Avenue on the
Yeah.
mall.
So I would say that we've been very, very lenient up till now, and it doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to be how we approach it long term. So we've had a lot of internal conversations on how to approach this. We're not charging today for those spots, which we eventually will be charging those businesses who want to be there because they are taking away parking revenue from us. We are going to put some parameters around what those structures look like from a zoning standpoint. But because of all of those big businesses struggling to the degree that we know they are, we've been very, very loose with them up till now and more just focused on doing our best to make sure that they're practicing some sort of social distancing and some sort of mask wearing to the best we can. It's not perfect, but I suspect that there's, going to be more casualties. South House announced that they're closing last week. I would suspect that there's going to be more based on what we're hearing there. So we're trying to work with them. The one change today, obviously, is that the governor implemented again a curfew, which is going to be hurtful for those businesses. I've been vocal that I don't necessarily think that that's the best approach at this time. A lot of reasons why. But we are going to probably allow the drinks to go, which we weren't allowing once the businesses opened up a little bit more. And we're trying our best to find a balance. But specifically on the structures, I suspect that once we get through the pandemic, so hopefully in the spring, there'll be a larger conversation around what we want there and what we don't want there. So nothing that's there is set in stone. I do personally like the Grove Street component on how that feels there. I have a mixed feeling a little bit about Newark Avenue specifically, but we're going to be starting the Newark Avenue streetscape redesign, I believe, in December. So all that stuff's coming out anyway.
The last time the drinks to go was happening, there was just mobs outside of establishments of people crowded in without any masks. Would there be? The drinks to go conversation literally started today because the concern around those businesses being viable long term. So we're going to have a police presence there. With the colder weather coming, there's probably going to be less people congregating on the plaza. But we're just trying to figure out different tools we can use to help those businesses. So if it gets out of hand, like we said last time, we'll take it away. And when they opened up the inside businesses and they allowed for more seating, we did take it away last time just because we wanted to have more controls over what was happening there. So we're conscious of it. We're going to watch it this weekend. If it gets out of control, we'll put the brakes on it. Great. And the other quick question was, I saw, I think it was in the New York Times, there's an article that part of the surge has to do with construction workers. And you do see a lot of construction workers in Jersey City without masks. Wouldn't it be pretty easy to just threaten to shut down their work sites? Of course, sometimes it happens when they're on their breaks, but not always.
We're doing our best to educate not only construction projects, everybody, and it's a challenge also even with city employees, to be honest with you. But we are seeing from our data that the spread here specifically is largely attributed to house parties and family gatherings that people are letting down their guard on. So then the governor actually indicated the same. So we're seeing some mass transit, but the primary driver is people inviting friends and family into their house. And then you have these kind of small little spreader events that kind of grow out from there. So we haven't really seen the construction sites as kind of the number one target for where they're coming from. But also I would just say that the data that we collect is different than the way New York City would see the data, because if somebody is if somebody's working on a site from, and they live, let's say in Bergen County, and they test positive, it won't necessarily hit the Jersey City COVID positive response database. It would likely be in Bergen County over there. And then it would hit obviously the statewide situation. But
Governor Murphy has said, consistent with us, that what we're seeing is really the house parties is where it's spreading.
Thank you, Steve.
No problem. Thank you.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much. So kind of going in the order of the way things are coming into the chat, David asks, what are the 4 major projects underway? So I think, you had mentioned that.
Oh,
there.
yeah, sure. So we'll start with, we're building an entire municipal complex on the south side of the city where there was very limited economic development. We put $200 million into that. We're on our 4th building there, and we're moving all of our city employees over to that area. And you've seen an entire change in street activity. We're seeing small businesses open, and that's moving forward. It was a huge bet, a huge investment, and that's moving. We have Bayfront, which is a $150 million project on the west side of Jersey City. That is the largest mixed income development site probably in the region. It's going to be 35% affordable housing. We bought the property from Honeywell earlier, about a year and a half we bought it. And it's really going to be something special. We sold the first 2 pieces. I think we're actually going to end up making money on it based on the way it looks right now, and have kind of a really transformative project there. We are doing, obviously, Journal Square, which is we're on the goal line. It's been slowed because of COVID, both with the museum and the Lowe's Theater. Both of those are moving forward. And I hope, fingers crossed, that we'll have something on both by the end of the year. So you're talking about a month and a half on that. And we have some really exciting projects that are underway over there as well. So I think that you're seeing some changes in Journal Square that are pretty meaningful. And then, SciTech City in Ward F. And tomorrow, as a matter of fact, we're announcing we're moving forward on the public school component of that. But the first groundbreaking will be in 2021, and that'll be a 17-acre expansion of Liberty Science Center. And it'll include a school and wet labs and incubator spaces and conference centers. And it's really going to be a significant game changer for that part of Jersey City as well. And so what I was saying earlier is that I think that most cities would hope that they could maybe have one of those sort of projects. These are 4 really major things that are going on in the city. And that's not like highlighting some of the other projects that we're working on, which I think are more common, that are this like streetscape renovations, like we started today on Central Avenue, or we're doing on West Side, or new police precincts. We're building a new East Station, East District, and a new North District currently. We're building several new libraries. So we got a lot of smaller projects, but when you talk about concentrated transformational type of projects, I would highlight those 4 as fairly unique.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We had the question, just generally, I know you spoke a little bit about COVID and how we're in the middle of this second wave, that, what you think the best, you had mentioned some of the things where you were kind of disagreeing with more of a shutdown, and maybe you can speak on that. And then also sort of the best next step to slow a worsening issue. Second part of that is if you think the numbers in Hudson County warrant new measures, and if there are any mask mandates for city employees. As one person points out, they see police officers without masks, and as the Rose Garden super spreader event showed, being outdoors is not enough to stop the spread.
Yep, all true. Let me start by saying that, we're seeing an increase in the number of cases. So both the 7-day average and the 14-day average, 45 and 55 respectively, versus our low, which would probably be 10 to 12 cases per day. So you're seeing a significant upward trend. The difference is that we're not seeing the same hospitalization rates up till now. And we have a very, very close contact with both Christ Hospital and Jersey City Medical Center. I get a report every morning, and we're not seeing the same ventilator use that we were earlier in the pandemic. Jersey City, as many of you know, was the first in the state, one of the first in the country to implement any sort of restrictions in March. I was well ahead of everybody else. And that was a time when we knew very, very little about the virus, how it was spread, what types of precautions, how contagious it was, how deadly it was. A lot of that has changed. I think we would all agree to that between what was known in April versus what is known today. So when the governor today implemented a curfew, 10 p.m. curfew, I expressed that I thought a curfew was diminishing returns for a couple reasons. First, it's not like COVID only comes out at nighttime. You could get COVID at any time during the day. You could get it at a supermarket. You could get it during your activities. So to single out restaurants as the only source of spreading it didn't seem fair to me. Number two is that the governor has indicated, as we indicated, that the source of spreading most of the virus today seems to be home activities, people inviting friends and family into their homes. It seems to me, and I think logic would bear this out, that if you put restrictions around restaurants and bars at 10 p.m., it's not as if those same people are going to go home. You're pushing them into that environment, which is an uncontrolled environment in their home. So it seems counterproductive to me on that front. Third, the restaurant industry is exceptionally fragile right now. I think it's one of the things that makes a city very special and a place that people want to live. But most of those restaurants, if you shut them down again, will not survive. I mean, they're operating today on 25% of their capacity, and you're essentially removing maybe the last seating. So if you're closing at 10, maybe you could seat somebody at 8:30 or 8. But beyond that, you can't. And so you're slowly diminishing their opportunity for success, which ultimately leads to layoffs. And we see it in the food pantries. We have 47 food pantries open in Jersey City now. We opened another one last week. It feeds in the course of 1 week. It's grown to 350 families. And the line starts at 5 a.m. when they start distribution at 8 a.m. And so I'm very, very conscious of balancing public health and also the local economy. So then it begs the question on what can you do? The city is starting a massive mask awareness campaign. We're mailing everybody masks. You should be getting some soon in your mailbox, and a public awareness campaign around the importance of wearing it. We are issuing orders to our public safety department around requiring them to wear masks. And we're trying to be, well, we're being reluctant in disciplinary actions, but if it comes to that, we will take those actions on it. I think the city and state could do a better job of contact tracing and forcing restaurants to document who comes in there and when they come in here, so you easier time to contact trace. And then the state implemented a app that allows easier contact tracing, which probably most people aren't aware of and don't use. And I think more awareness around that. And then finally, I do think that you could take an aggressive approach on restaurants that aren't good actors in this situation. And whether that's removing their ABC license permanently or massive fines, I do think that should be a tool that the city or state has, but it shouldn't be the primary driver on how we approach them, because not every one of them is a bad actor. And ultimately, you're going to cripple some of these. So that's kind of the big picture kind of perspective I have on where we are today on COVID and the numbers, and then kind of directionally what I think we should be doing.
Awesome, thank you.
Quick addition. So no expectation of closing down the parks again?
No.
Okay.
We've put up signs, as many of you notice, in the last 2 weeks around the parks close at 10 p.m. to make that a little bit more visible to people, and we are going to start enforcing that a little bit more. But as far as during the day, the answer is no. I'm not looking to go backwards at this point. I think, we got to trust our residents to be responsible as well and practice good judgment. And we're going to try and find a good medium on that.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so Elena, for those of you on following the chat, Elena has put in the state contact tracing app that Mayor Phillip mentioned. And I do think, when we were in Maine, one of the things that struck me was the robust contact tracing for restaurants. And I'm just wondering, as a follow-up to that, is that something that you can mandate from a city level to say, hello, okay, we're going to, every person that comes into this bar or restaurant, we are going to take your name and your number in that way?
Yeah. I think that you're going to see the city doing that in the near future. Like I've noticed that if you go to other states as well, Sarah, that other states require restaurants to do a better job of that. And whether you're in Jersey City or Hoboken or somewhere else in New Jersey, it's absent here. And it would make contact tracing much easier. And for those that aren't familiar, when you come in and you check into a restaurant, if you're there to stay and you're not to go, they make you fill out basic form so they could more effectively contact trace you.
And is that something that you can implement, or does
Yes.
that have to come?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, yes. Yeah, I mean, we could implement that at the local level. I don't think there's any issue around that.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. So we have a question here. I guess maybe just like a quick update if you have any new information. A few months ago, we circulated the surveys for the master plan, the city master plan, and we're just kind of wondering what the timeline is on that and what is being done with those surveys and next steps.
I'm going to defer to Anicia on that. I haven't gotten an update in a couple of weeks. So let me circle back, Sarah, and send you an email with exactly where we stand with that right now.
Sure, and I can also follow up with Tanya and Anicia as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next question then is that you mentioned the Bayfront development is a $150 million development and will only be 45% affordable housing.
35, yeah.
Okay, 35. West Side is a predominantly working class community. Won't this be another push to drive the community out from their homes? Will any of the revenues help subsidize costs from the community, especially now during the pandemic?
What was the last part of the question?
Will any of the revenues help subsidize costs for the community, especially now during the pandemic?
Well, Bayfront is a 10, 15-year project that's underway, and I think you'd be hard-pressed to argue that we're pushing anybody out when we're creating more housing for them. It's 35% affordable housing. We've worked with all of the affordable housing advocacy groups in Jersey City, and I think it's something that everybody's excited about. It's 8,000 additional units on the west side, and we're recreating an entire waterfront based on the lessons that we learned from Newport, which weren't as effective as they should have been. So I would argue that we're not pushing anybody out. We're energizing an area of the city that needs it. If you've ever been to the property that's there, it is 100 acres of nothing right now. It was a Superfund site that we acquired and that was remediated, and that we're going to be creating into an area with a light rail, an area with a school, with public safety, and a truly mixed income community. Are the revenues going to go to help the community? Yeah, the revenues go to the general fund that helps the entire city. And so we're focused on keeping taxes stable so people can continue to live here. And I think at the same time, we've been adding services across the board, whether it be health and human services, whether it be our youth development, or whether it be our general public safety. So I would say the short answer is yes, it goes towards those services.
Awesome, thank you. So the next question we have is sort of your rationale for being in favor of the inclusionary zoning ordinance as it is.
Okay. I don't know if you guys could hear that.
Yeah, I can hear them here too. It's
Yeah,
just like
okay.
general siren.
So I think a lot of misinformation was promulgated during that whole affordable housing inclusionary zoning ordinance. And so let me take a step back and try to bring everybody up to speed on how we got to the vote 2 weeks ago and what it means for the future of Jersey City. So a little bit over a year ago, Joyce Waterman sponsored a ordinance for inclusionary zoning, and it was based after Newark's ordinance of inclusionary zoning, which was the model for the state of New Jersey, pushed by Fair Share Housing and all the good government advocacy groups. And so Jersey City based our ordinance on that. We put it forward. And at the time, some of the other council people came forward with an alternative suggestion. And rather than move forward with one ordinance, the council decided to table them both and then deliberate and have conversations for the better part of a year on what some marriage of these two ordinances will look like. And so for the last year, they've had conversations, they've gone back and forth. It's been very, very slow. And the truth is,
that as a result of that, the city has lost hundreds of units because in search of the perfect ordinance, the perfect affordable housing ordinance, there was nothing in place to protect anything, and we've lost a lot of opportunities through that. So Councilman Waterman said, let's move forward on an ordinance, let's base it on Newark's ordinance, and let's incorporate into this ordinance the most important components of what we know and what we learned is important to the other ordinance. Now, the question is, what are those going to be? The primary thing of importance to change was who's the target audience of the affordable housing component of 20%. So the original ordinance that Joyce Waterman put forward had 20% with a focus of workforce housing, moderate income. And the model ordinance that Fair Share Housing was pushing at this point was an ordinance that would focus more on lower income inclusionary. So they revamped the ordinance that Joyce put forward, Council President Waterman, and they included a target of lower income communities. And they moved forward on that in the hope of protecting the city moving forward. Now, it became more of a political football than factual, based on some, aspirations of what something could be, but isn't really factual in how it works in operation. So I'll explain what I mean on that. So our ordinance is based on Newark's ordinance today. And the way that it works is that it has a goal of 20% affordable housing, and based on givebacks to the community, that number can be reduced to 5%, and it has requirements around union labor, and it also has requirements around what those givebacks look like. So to put that in perspective, it's exactly what the Saddlewood Court project that we're discussing earlier is exactly that Councilman Solomon actually worked on, exactly what the affordable housing ordinance that we pushed forward. Goal of 20%, Councilman Solomon negotiated down to keep some in there, 5%, but at the same time give back a school, which is a value of $30 million, and have a union labor component of it. It's exactly what the ordinance is that we put forward. Now, other people say, well, we want to have 20%. It is what it is, 20%. Now, I would just take a step back and say our ordinance is based on Newark's ordinance. And Newark's ordinance is more flexible than the 20% rigid one. And how many buildings did Newark build in the 3 years since they've implemented that ordinance? The answer is 0. They haven't built one building underneath that ordinance because the economics don't work for it. And so when you speak to the mayor there, he'll tell you that in order to get those projects to work, they had to give 20 and 30-year tax abatements, which we're no longer doing here in Jersey City. And you had to hope for basic incentives, tax credits from the state at 4% or 9%, which is extremely competitive. So looking at the data and being realistic around what we can accomplish here, we decided that we were going to put in place an ordinance similar to Saddlewood Court, and that's where we are. And I would suspect that when you look forward a year from now, even the naysayers would say that it's going to be successful, because I just know we're going to build more affordable housing than anywhere else in the state of New Jersey based on it.
So I guess
hopefully that made sense. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, my follow-up question to that would be, is there, and maybe you could speak to this because you had spoken to this when the Downtown Coalition of Neighborhood Associations kind of came together and talked about the necessities before amenities. And one of the things that you mentioned was that there is a lack of city space. In other words, places that we could purchase as a city and then use those for like designated affordable housing units instead of relying on and schools, et cetera, instead of relying on developers to fund those projects. So maybe you can talk a little bit on why this is the better option.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way that the city can afford to acquire properties without having to, let me say it this way. There's no way the city could afford to acquire land, let's say in downtown Jersey City at the current prices that they are, to build a senior citizen, low-income housing site. It's physically impossible based on the math. Furthermore, there's no way that we could even revamp projects that our federal or state obligation without using the private sector at this point. I mean, Highland Gardens is the best example. Everybody agrees that it's a dated, lower income housing site. It would be impossible to upgrade that without including
market rate housing to pay for the upgrades on the lower income, just because the federal government has no money. On the schools, it actually is the state's obligation to build those schools. It isn't the Jersey City taxpayer obligation to build that, but the state has no money to do that. So in order to offset that responsibility, we have to find creative ways to do it. There's no other way to accomplish that. So if somebody could figure out a way to do that, we'd be open to it. But up till now, nobody has been able to. And that's why you even see people like Councilman Solomon, who was opposed to the ordinance. I guess he voted no to the ordinance, but the Saddlewood Court project that he negotiated is exactly consistent with the ordinance. It took down the affordable housing to 5%. It negotiated a community give back, which is the school and the park. And again, the economics are very, very tight. You know, it doesn't work to have no tax abatements or incentives, and then at the same time require community give backs, 20% affordable housing, and union labor. The economics just won't work on the project. Something has to give on that. And so it's about kind of finding a place where we can all benefit on all fronts.
Thank you. Yeah. So we have a comment just that where you said you mentioned fair share housing with regard to the 2019 ordinance. Yet fair share housing characterized this Jersey City ordinance as a sham and deeply flawed and probably the weakest in the state. And so I think
can I respond to that? Let me respond to that and say fair share housing's mission is to create ordinances in municipalities across the state of New Jersey that are consistent with their model ordinance, so that way other municipalities don't have a watered down version of that. And most municipalities in the suburban areas have an obligation under court from the state of New Jersey that fair share housing capitalizes on. Jersey City doesn't have that obligation. And furthermore, fair share housing, when I've had this conversation with them, they're not interested in the ecosystem that we're responsible for. They're not interested in the need for schools. They're not interested whether we give tax abatements or we don't give tax abatements. They're not interested if people in Jersey City work on a job. Their sole goal is to say, build 20% affordable housing in every single project. And when you say to them, well, the economics don't work, they say, well, we still want our model ordinance to be used. And then when I said to them, well, Newark hasn't built one project, they acknowledge that, but they say it's only been 2 or 3 years. You got to give it more time, which is more counterproductive to what we're trying to achieve here as well.
Yeah, and based on that also, I think, with the question being, again, like, is it worth then, it's better than nothing, but, it's also, like, where is the regulation, right? So like, yes, if we have this community, give back element, who decides or what decides, or is there something in the master plan that will decide what we bring in and what qualifies as the community give back element? Because, by building 8,000 new units, for instance, right, and 30 of them percent being affordable housing, well, then you also have all of these other luxury developments that are market price that are paying for that. But then in addition to that, you've got all of these new things that are putting stress on our already stressed out infrastructure. So I guess that's kind of the question is like, 30% versus you're providing some affordable housing, but then the majority of it, no matter which way you slice it, is going to be going towards market rate.
There isn't a city in the country that has figured out how to build 60% affordable housing and still make the economics work on a private sector project. Doesn't exist, okay? And there aren't cities that are building really 35% the way they are. Most of them target or aspire to 20% and do consistent with what we did here with Saddlewood Court. Now, on your question on who negotiates it or how does that work, Saddlewood Court is a good example of that. You had your councilman who is your elected representation on the city council, and he's been in communication with both you as the community group or the organization and the developer and advocating for it across the city council. And so that's how ultimately it works in getting the best projects in theory, right?
And is it a perfect system? It's probably not a perfect system, but I think that there's enough checks and balances and eyes in order to make sure that the projects are maximized what they are. You know, if you look at the downtown PS 16, it's the same sort of project. You would never get the annex built that's under construction about to open at the end of Columbus if it wasn't for this sort of system exactly. That is a good example of a building that retained affordable housing, increased a little bit of affordable housing, and we got a school out of it, and it's union labor. And that's because there was some flexibility allowed, which is really, really important to communities. And, you know, I don't really subscribe to the notion that we shouldn't be building because our infrastructure, and I would push back on that a little bit, can't sustain it. I mean, the city today is not near the maximum population that it's been at historically, so I'll start there. Number two, we're doing close to $1 billion in sewer work. We've upgraded most of our city facilities. We're building an entire municipal complex. We're paving 15 to 20 miles of road per year. So I think we are punching above our weight on many fronts. And the only way to keep taxes flat for a city is to have a growing city. You know, when we start the year, in any given year, our budget is no different than your home budget. Your costs go up every single year, even if you do nothing. You have union labor costs that go up just contractually. We have insurance costs that go up. We have energy costs that go up. And the only way to pay for that, or there's two ways to pay for it actually. It's either that I go to you and I say, here's your additional tax bill to pay for this, or we find somebody else who wants to move here and they contribute in order to pay for it. That's it. That's the only two tools that we have here in Jersey City, because the state of New Jersey doesn't allow us any other form of taxation. So I think we're building responsibly. I think that we've pushed back on a lot of the larger zoning changes without community feedback. I think that we've gotten rid of the tax abatement structure. We haven't given one for 4 years at this point. So we've changed development in a lot of ways that are productive for residents, but a healthy city is a growing city. And I think that's important to kind of emphasize.
Yeah, and I guess with that, you know, one of the things Alina said in the chat that I think is good is like, you know, the inclusionary zoning ordinance that was passed includes things like parking lots as community givebacks, you know, and maybe that kind of language could be tightened up. And then just to add to that, you know, as an organization and in a volunteer position, you know, there's a lot of responsibility that comes with, okay, and I'm, you know, I'm happy to have it. That's why I'm here. Yeah. But, you know, working every project being a case by case basis where then it starts to look like, okay, well, if some developers got this, then will other developers follow that lead? And like, you know, oh, this developer got this. If there's no sort of like structure within that, how do we continue to keep that regulated, or what will that look like?
Well, I think that's governed by your city council representation and the fiscal analysis that go for each project. And, you know, it was easy to turn the parking deck conversation into a hot button issue also, where people would say, well, they're trading or potentially trading parking spaces for affordable housing. And I would say, again, you know, that's a reflection on what that specific community would want in that specific area. If that community feels so burdened in their cars, it's not something that I share, and their priority is to offload some of that burden, it's a conversation that they want to have. It's not my place or anybody else's place to say, no, you need this specific community feedback, community give back only as the parameters to move forward. We wanted to give flexibility to the council people and to each individual community on what they thought was important for their specific community that they deal with. And now the other issue that was kind of the hot button on this inclusionary zoning ordinance was about the city council having flexibility to not obligate the affordable housing. And as we said to Fair Share Housing, and we said all along, that is a place we're happy to tighten up the language. The only reason that was in there was because we're on the goal line for some major litigation settlements. We were on the goal line for the One Journal Square settlement, which ended up being a resolution, and we're on the goal line for the embankment resolution. So if you think through the ordinance and you say, okay, where the Embankment Coalition, the city, and let's say the owner of the embankment has been negotiating now for 3 years aggressively and in litigation for 20 years, and the economics barely work on the project, as I'm sure you're going to hear in December. We're close, but it barely works, and then an ordinance triggers that there's an added 20% obligation, then obviously the embankment will never come to a resolution. So you need some language in the ordinance to make sure that there is some degree of flexibility based on projects that are already underway in advanced negotiation. And I thought also in the city council meeting that was unfairly characterized, but I think that the city was acting very responsibly actually in making sure that we find the balance between setting a good framework for development long-term and also protecting the community workers that have been negotiating a long time on certain projects. And that's kind of where we are.
Yeah, absolutely. Understandable. And thank you for that. The other thing too, just I guess is what I'm kind of gleaning from some of the comments is, there's, because of just the sort of depression that we've fallen into as a community and as a nation from this pandemic, where you're seeing houseless numbers go up. And, I guess my question that I feel like might encompass this, but also maybe you can speak more specifically, is like, how do we define growth? Because if growth means, if you're defining growth as a city growing means developing in a certain way, but a community decides that growth means means more like growth in community strength, built, more, stopping or halting developments until we have a very specific master plan, more sort of these like necessities.
Yep.
And worse. And so I guess I'm seeing some of the questions being like, this is the only way forward, this is the only way that we can.
In what way? In what way? Meaning that growth means a city is growing. When you say growth, I think the general consensus on growth means the city's growing population-wise. But if you wanted to use some of the soft metrics as well, I mean, the city's growing from an infrastructure standpoint, the city's growing from a school standpoint, the city's growing from a health and human services standpoint, the city's growing from a public safety standpoint. I would argue that the city's growing on all of those fronts. But at the end of the day, there's two choices with regards to your tax bill. It's as simple as that. And if people are burdened today with regards to their tax bill, then they just need to understand that there's only two ways forward from the state of New Jersey. It's either raise taxes on the existing residents or continue to grow as a city and find new people to do that. Now, when you talk about cutting the budget, somebody would say, well, why don't you cut the budget? As we've argued to the city council time and time again, show us where to cut and we're happy to cut. Show me, happy to cut. And there's never been any proposals in the last 2 years of meaning, nothing. So absent of that, it feels like it's all really rhetoric. And I would say that the city is growing on all those fronts. Any soft metrics or hard metrics, the city is growing and punching above our weight. And if you want to drill down on specifics, I'm happy to do that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, yeah, in terms of understanding that the term growth is multidimensional, because sometimes I think what happens is it seems like growth of like, who does the growth benefit? And, would say like the growth would benefit the business owners, the growth would benefit, newer residents, but maybe older residents here don't feel like they're being represented. And one specific example I have is, we go back to that example of the senior center. My neighbor across the street's husband, during COVID-19, his Alzheimer's worsened to a point where he needed to be moved into a full-time nursing home facility. Yep. And there was no nursing home facility in Hudson County or Jersey City that provided that resource. And so he's in Morristown. She doesn't have a car, no license, has, and has no way to get out to see her husband, yep. who is in this facility. And so, when I think of people like her, and I know there are countless other stories like this, it just seems like somehow there has to be this other, a happy, and here William says it, a happy balance between quality of life for current residents and growth.
Yeah, I think that, again, I mean, I would argue that the city on all of those metrics is overachieving. I think you'd be hard pressed to find a city that has built as many affordable housing units over the last couple of years as we have. I think you'd be hard pressed to find a city that is investing in building homeless shelters as we have. I think you'd be hard pressed to find a city that's leveraging the private sector to build schools or repurpose for housing sites. I think you'd be hard pressed to find a city that has used technology and leveraged technology to solve transit desert problems or food desert problems. I think you'd be hard pressed to find a city that is using solar and electrical energy at the same rate in New Jersey as we are, as far as investing in infrastructure. So I don't necessarily agree when somebody says because you're building a high-rise building that's market rate means that you're neglecting other parts of the city. I think our team is doing a pretty good job of trying to check all the boxes on all of those fronts. I mean, it's not easy to do, but at the end of the day, we're trying to make sure that the existing residents can live here without putting hardship of raising taxes on them, and at the same time investing in social services and resources for those existing residents that are struggling. We're trying to do both of those two things. And the only way to accomplish that is to have a growing city in a safe, stable way. And we're doing those things. I think you'd be hard pressed to argue otherwise.
Thank you. And then another kind of follow-up to that is just if you have information on, I'm reading here, do you have information on how the pandemic has worsened the conditions of the homeless community, workers, and undocumented residents?
Yeah, undocumented residents is our biggest challenge. We started an Office of Immigrant Affairs that has been recognized nationally as a leader. We have a phenomenal division director there and a team that has done a great amount of work, but the undocumented workers continue to be, undocumented residents continue to be our biggest challenge here because they don't qualify for a lot of the federal programs. And so while they have been hit as hard as others with regards to the pandemic, they don't have the same safety net systems that some of you or I would have if we were in that situation. And so we are investing in more resources on the homeless front overall in partnerships. We had another meeting with Garden State. We're expanding our warming center hours. We're expanding our transportation out to Kearney. We're expanding our outreach on the social service front. We're dedicating more dollars to it. So we are doing a lot on the homeless front. And then we have some programs that have been kind of widely recognized, like the shower program, the homeless shelter program with the housing component integrated into it. So there's a lot that we're doing on the homeless front, but it's probably one of our bigger challenges. And it truthfully feels like we're swimming upstream a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can imagine too, you know, the immense sort of responsibility and pressure that must, you know, feel. And we appreciate all of your efforts so far to do that within the best of your ability. And a question just came in. Are there certain neighborhoods more severely impacted by COVID versus others? Do you have stats on that?
We've been reluctant to share stats on infection rates because of the state has asked us not to. Overall, I would say that the south side of the city has had it harder than, let's say, downtown. And that's not only because of infection rates in some of our minority communities or more economically challenged communities. It also deals with resources around learning and education. So there's a lot of challenges that more economically challenged communities have versus more wealthier communities. So I would point to the south side of the city as having hit harder than, let's say, downtown.
Yeah, why has the state said not to release statistics?
The state doesn't like the fact that we have our own tableau that we put the statistics out. They want to control how that comes out and the data around that. And so they've asked us not to push that out there based on zip codes, and we've been respectful to that.
And so I just a couple more and then we'll wrap up.
Yeah,
and thank you so much for your
okay.
time. So I guess, you know, maybe developers can adopt a homeowner or two and pay back their taxes was a suggestion.
I'd like that.
And another thing is maybe we should start taxing these residents that can afford to pay $3,000 in rent instead of the ones struggling to pay the increasingly rising prices. Yeah, I mean, I think that this is definitely one of the sort of points of.
Could I touch on that for a second?
Sure.
Yeah, so it's important to understand that New Jersey doesn't give flexibility on taxation to their municipalities at all. They only give municipalities one tool, which is property taxes. So they don't allow us to arbitrarily choose who pays what, how property taxes are driven. They say, this is the formula. This is how revaluations work. This is how you're going to treat every resident, whether they're worth $2 billion or $2. And those are the rules that govern how we operate. And so while I would like to have more flexibility and more tools around taxation that would make it a fairer state and fairer city, New Jersey and Trenton just doesn't give us those tools. And so the only thing that we have is property taxes. And we're not allowed to say that somebody on 5th Street pays different rate than somebody on Ogden Avenue where I live, or somebody on Grant Avenue. It's just uniform based on their assessment, and this is what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other sort of last questions or comments for Mayor Fulop? And again, knowing that if you have something, the mayor is very responsive via email. So I'm happy to, if you think of something later on, you can email harscoveassociate@gmail.com, and I will pass those questions on to the mayor.
I just see that. I wanted to say, Sarah, if somebody had questions on how they could change the taxation system in New Jersey, it's a bigger process, but I'm happy to connect you to our state representatives, and they would be the ones to push that ultimately. And if you get my email from Sarah, I'm happy to connect you.
Yeah. Would you mind making a note just to send me that information? Because I'll distribute it.
Or I could just say right here, it's my last name, FULOPS, first initial. Here's what I'll do. I'll just type it in here. That's probably what I'll do.
Oh, I was speaking more of like the state representatives and
I will connect anybody. I'll connect you to that as well.
Okay. But you're going to type it in, which will be great. Thank you.
Oh, that was private. Sorry,
That's
Sarah.
Okay.
You could,
got it.
all right.
Got this teacher handwriting here. All right. And Laird asks, now that public question number 3 was approved in the election, is the city getting engaged in planning for this?
Is that that's the redistricting one that you're asking about, or the arts, or the question around the arts?
Weed.
Oh, cannabis. Yeah. So
well, I think number 3 was the redistricting.
Perhaps Laird, you meant question 1, not 3.
Yeah, redistricting, which some of you have asked about, is going to impact you on the local level, not in the 2021 election. It will impact you in the 2025 election on who your council person is. So there won't be any changes for 2021. On the arts, I'll touch on that as well. Jersey City implemented a additional tax. Thank you for those of you that voted on that. The structure is going to be put forward by a committee that's working right now, which is the Arts Council, and then Christine Goodman, who many of you know, and then one person from my office are trying to structure, and it's one person from the council, the legislation on what that committee will look like, who can apply, how much dollars they can get, is it for-profit and non-for-profit arts organizations, and I'm entirely flexible to whatever they decide. I don't have a horse in the race. The only thing that they've asked and they've made clear is that city projects won't be able to apply for any of those dollars, which I think is very, very reasonable. And I'm entirely supportive of that. So it goes entirely back to the community, and which is a good thing. So that will probably be solidified, and the draft will be in January. And then on cannabis, which I've been an early supporter of, we're looking at the legislation that was proposed today in Trenton. It's 200 pages. The challenging thing right now is that most of the parameters on how close it can be to a school restricts a lot of Jersey City on potential locations. So we need to make sure that they revise that in the state legislation. So we're working with our representatives on that. And then I suspect that the council will draft some local legislation on where and how and what type of zones they want potential dispensaries to be in. As it is today, dispensary can open at any retail location. So hopefully the council will put a little bit more, tighter parameters around that, so that way the community can have some more control.
Great. Yeah, I do think, oh, the 2% tax, there it says, don't forget.
Oh, the 2% tax. Yeah, the 2% tax, there's a proposal on the council, which I'm supportive of, is to dedicate that to the schools. I do think that the dollars should go to the schools or to the communities most impacted by marijuana arrests, incarceration, and social justice issues. So we're going to dedicate those dollars to some form of that. The dollars won't be going to the general fund.
We have the question, why are you supportive of the Cannabis Act?
Oh, Joan. I'm supportive of it. I've been supportive for a long time because I see that the differences in the arrest rates on how they're treated, and frankly, I just never felt that cannabis or marijuana or smoking weed or even selling small quantities of that warranted the type of record that would follow somebody for years afterwards. And it was predominantly minority communities in Jersey City, and often they didn't have the resources to clean up their record afterwards. So it was something that would follow them for years and years and years afterwards. So I thought it was kind of an unfair mark. And if we had the opportunity to get rid of it, that would be a good thing. And so that's why I was supportive of it initially. I do have some concerns on the drafts of the legislation down in the Senate right now, because it feels very much like it's focused more on the business component of it as opposed to the social justice component of it. But hopefully the advocates, which are becoming more and more vocal, I think some of them are on here actually as well, will have some movement down there in Trenton and make their voices heard.
And lastly, what would you name, if you had a dispensary, what would you name it? I've been seeing some really good names coming out.
I don't know. I got to get back to you on it. I got to give it some thought. I don't know. I'm not going into that business. Those days are behind me.
Yeah, there's been some funny social media / TikTok type videos to come out.
Yeah.
With Sopranos-like characters, Italian deli-like characters coming out, asking you what you would like. So
I will say that if you should reach out to your council people, we do get a lot of interest just because of Jersey City being such close proximity to New York. There's been no shortage of companies reaching out and expressing how do we get a license and where can we go in Jersey City. I mean, you're talking about dozens upon dozens of people reaching out. And so you do want to have your council people put some parameters in place that are important to you sooner rather than later. So that's just a suggestion. And I think that it's best if it's driven by people in the community, because different communities have different feelings around this. We see that maybe downtown is more supportive than the older African-American community that lives in maybe some parts of the south side of the city. And so we want to make sure that we're approaching it differently based on the communities that potentially it's going to be in. So definitely reach out to your council people to make sure that your voices are heard on that.
yes, absolutely. That's a great point. And also kind of just thinking about how we keep the business local as well, right? Because what we don't want are, people coming, I mean, not weed tourism necessarily, but more just like weed investors, like, people coming from Manhattan with money who want to build their annex here in Jersey City, but aren't really in any way vested in the community.
Agree.
All right, any last questions, comments, concerns? If you do have
I guess I'll
some,
just close it out by saying thank you, Sarah, again, for giving me the opportunity. And I would just say to all of you, I mean, hopefully, even if we don't agree on some of the issues or legislation, or we have a nuanced difference, hopefully it was insightful where you understand a little bit more on why and how we approach things. And the fact that I could articulate to you that there is a lot of thought specifically on each of those pieces of legislation on how to balance moving the city forward and also making sure that we're not leaving anybody behind. Hopefully that came through a little bit on this, but thank you for the opportunity.
yeah, it
And
definitely came through, and there's a lot of thank yous coming in. Just thank you for your service and general leadership. And you know, I know being a mayor is a very tough job, especially now. But you know, we appreciate your leadership. So thank you very much.
I saw Donna do a big yawn about 2 seconds ago, so I think that's my cue to get going.
I also am very hungry as well. So thank you so much.
All right, take care.
Everybody.
Thank you.
Bye. Take care.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Have a wonderful
you.
evening.
Thank you, Sarah.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sam. Have a wonderful evening.
So informative. Great meeting.
Thank you.
Great job. Yes,
Thanks,
I
Elena.
agree.
Christy.
Yeah. Hi, Sam.
Hi.
Hey, neighbor. Thank you,
Thanks.
Sarah. Really good job. Well
Thank you
done.
so much.
Good job.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Have a
Bye.
great evening.